I can spot an amateur writer in 3 lines of dialogue. Not 3 pages, not 3 paragraphs, 3 lines. And it has nothing to do with the story they're telling. It's about how their characters talk. Because here's the brutal truth. Dialogue is where most writers reveal that they haven't done the work. You can have a brilliant plot, complex characters, and beautiful prose, but if your dialogue sounds fake, readers will put your book down. Today, I'm going to show you the 9 dialogue mistakes that instantly mark your writing as amateur and exactly how to fix them. Once you understand what makes dialogue feel real, you'll never write flat conversations again. Let me tell you about a manuscript I edited last year. The story was incredible. A thriller about corporate espionage with genuine twists that I didn't see coming. But every time characters opened their mouths, they sounded like robots reading from a corporate handbook. Hello, Jennifer. How are you doing today? I wanted to discuss the matters we talked about in yesterday's meeting regarding the Johnson account. Nobody actually talks like that, not even in a very corporate setting. So after we rewrote the dialogue to sound like actual human beings, the book went from technically proficient to couldn't put it down. And it was the same plot, the same characters, but different conversations. And that's exactly how much dialogue matters. And so while you're watching, comment with your biggest struggles when writing dialogue, because I love hearing from the community. Now, let's talk about the amateur mistake that screams the loudest. It's one I see all the time, and it's where every character sounds exactly the same. Your teenager sounds like your grandma, who sounds like your CEO, who sounds like the barista. They all use the same vocabulary, the same sentence structure, the same rhythm, and here's what it looks like. I believe we should proceed with caution on this matter, the street gang leader said. I concur with your assessment of the situation, the 16-year-old replied. Indeed, it would be prudent to exercise restraint, the mechanic added. Nobody actually talks like this, especially not these 3 people. So now let me be clear on this. I'm talking about your main cast here. Not every shopkeeper, guard, or background character needs a wildly distinct voice. So really focus this on your core recurring characters. Now, real people have different vocabulary levels, sentence lengths, speech patterns, what they choose to talk about, and how they react to information. Now, here's the fix when you come up against this. You're a street gang leader. Nah, we ain't rushing into nothing, not yet. And your 16-year-old would probably sound something such as, yeah, like maybe we should chill for a sec. And the mechanic, hold up, let's not do anything stupid, right? And so these all have the same meaning. They're just 3 completely different voices. And here's something important. Character voice can shift over time. A really good example of this is Breaking Bad. Walter White speaks completely differently in season 1 than in season 5. Strong character arcs will often show a change in how a character speaks over the course of a story. And so also remember that people do code switch, right? Someone might speak formally with their boss, but then casually with their friends. And of course, differently again with their family. That's not inconsistency, that's realism. So the rule really is read your dialogue out loud. And if you can't tell who's speaking without the dialogue tags, then your characters sound the same and some editing is needed. Now, an important note with this is on phonetic accents. This is something that comes up quite often. So writing accents phonetically, such as, I'm telling ye this ere hill's haunted, apologies for that accent, and it can work in moderation, but it actually tires readers really quickly, and it has a potential to become a caricature. So a better technique is syntax, slang, and rhythm without respelling everything. So instead, it would be, I'm telling you, this hill's haunted, and let the word choice and the rhythm carry the accent. Mistake number 2 is using dialogue tags as crutches. I can't believe you did that, she said angrily. What are you talking about? He asked, confused. You know exactly what I mean, she replied accusingly. Now, This is a bad road to go down. So if you're doing this, please stop. If your dialogue needs an adverb to convey the emotion, then your dialogue isn't doing its job. Good dialogue shows emotion through word choice and rhythm, not through adverbs that we slapped onto said, right? So here is how I would rewrite this. I can't believe you did that. What are you talking about? You know exactly what I mean. Yeah, as you probably guessed there, all I did was remove the dialogue tags. It was probably one of the easiest rewrites I've done for a long time. And ultimately, the point here is that we don't need angrily, confused, or accusingly. The words themselves convey the emotion. Now, there is a way that we could make this even stronger, add action beats instead of dialogue tags. So, I can't believe you did that. Sarah turned away from him. What are you talking about? You know exactly what I mean. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Now we see the emotion instead of being told about it. And really the rule here is use said 90% of the time, save fancy dialogue tags for when the manner of speaking actually matters, and really never use adverbs. Mistake number 3 is characters giving exposition through dialogue. This is one that really frustrates me. And an example would be, as you know, Jane, we've been working together at this company for 5 years, ever since you graduated from Stanford with your degree in computer science, and I hired you to work on the data analysis team. This is not really dialogue. It's the naughty writer sneaking exposition into the dialogue. It's called, as you know, Bob dialogue, and it's the mark of an amateur. And here's why it fails. People don't tell each other things that they already know. If Jane knows she's been working there for 5 years and went to Stanford, then why would this person be explaining it to her? So the fix here is to find another way to deliver that information. You can use what's known as summary dialogue. They talked about how they'd met, Jane, fresh out of Stanford, him looking for someone to rebuild his data team. This isn't lazy, this is efficient when the details don't matter. Or another way you could do this is through natural conversation that reveals information organically. So remember when you started, fresh out of Stanford, ready to change the world, Jane smiled, and you gave me the worst data set imaginable as a test. 5 years later, you're still complaining about it. Same information, but delivered more naturally. Here's something important. If you've trained yourself to avoid telling, you might think all dialogue must be direct and on the page. But indirect and summary dialogue are legitimate tools. They manage pacing, avoid repetition, and they let you skip to the most interesting parts. The main rule to follow is that if your character is telling another character something they both already know, you're probably writing exposition and not dialogue. If you want weekly writing advice just like this, practical techniques that you can use immediately, join our email newsletter. There's a link in the description. There's no fluff, just actionable tips to make your writing stronger. Now, mistake number 4 is perfect grammar in casual speech. An example, I'm not going to tolerate this behavior any longer. You have repeatedly demonstrated that you cannot be trusted with important responsibilities. Now, this might work for a lawyer in a courtroom, but if this is a parent yelling at a teenager, well, it sounds a bit ridiculous. Real people use contractions, I'm, your, can't, won't. They use fragments, not happening, absolutely not. Interrupted thoughts, I just, ... I can't even, ... slang and colloquialisms, poor grammar when they're emotional. So here is how I would rewrite that. I'm done. You hear me? Done. You can't be trusted with anything anymore. This is, of course, more natural. And now, if we're talking about historical or fantasy settings, you don't need to police every word's etymology or avoid every term that technically didn't exist in 1850, but just avoid terms that feel glaringly modern for your world or tone. Don't let pedantry kill your story's momentum, but stick to the rule that dialogue should sound like speech, not writing. Use contractions, break grammar rules, let your characters talk like actual humans. Mistake number 5 is tennis match dialogue. This one will really send your readers to sleep, and it goes a little something like this. How are you? I'm fine. How are you? I'm good. What are you doing today? Nothing much. You? Same. Want to get a coffee? Sure. where. As we all know, this is how actual conversations work, back and forth, question, answer. But in fiction, it ends up being deadly boring because tennis match dialogue doesn't have any conflict, no subtext, there's no tension. And so to fix this, it's a similar fix to how we repaired using dialogue tags as crutches. You want to introduce conflict or subtext. So in the example I gave, it would be, how are you? Fine. She didn't really look at him. Really? Because you've been avoiding my calls. I've been busy. Right. Busy. Now there's tension. Now we want to know what is really going on here. And one more thing about names in dialogue. Using someone's name constantly in casual one-on-one conversations feels unnatural. But of course, there are exceptions. Some cultures use names frequently. Some individuals have a voice quirk of overusing names. And in high-stakes contexts like medical emergencies or military operations, using names helps avoid confusion. Also, people sometimes use names intentionally for manipulation, dominance, flirtation, or emotional emphasis. The guideline really is avoid constant name repetition unless it's cultural, situational, or it's a deliberate character tick. The rule is really that every line of dialogue should either create conflict, reveal character, or move the plot forward. If it doesn't do at least one of those things, then cut it. On to number 6, which is over-explaining emotions. I'm so angry right now, Mark said angrily. I feel frustrated and upset about what just happened. Now, if Mark is angry, we should see it in his dialogue, not hear him announce it. Real people, of course, rarely narrate their own emotions. When you're furious, you don't say, I'm furious. You say things that reveal you're furious. Get out now before I do something we'll both regret. Oh, that's rich coming from you. You've got to be kidding me. We know from this passage that Mark is angry. We don't need him to tell us. And so the important nuance is that some people and some cultures communicate very directly. Some individuals, particularly neurodivergent people, speak plainly about their emotions. And that's perfectly valid. The key is to make your character's communication style intentional, not generic. Also, not every character uses subtext. Direct talkers exist, and that can be very compelling. Subtext must suit the character, not the rulebook. And be careful not to build your entire story on miscommunication and buried feelings. That can become exhausting for readers. The rule is really to show emotion through what characters say and how they say it, not by having them announce their feelings, unless directness is part of who that character is. Dialogue is one of the hardest areas to get right, but it makes or breaks manuscripts. If you're working on a manuscript and want expert help making your dialogue sound natural while still moving your plot forward, we've spent over 11 years helping writers do exactly this. We have some of the best editors in the world who specialize in making dialogue feel real without losing momentum. Check out our editing services in the description at publishingpush.com. Drop us a line in the contact form or book in a call. Mistake number 7 is where everyone answers every question. So in real life, as we know, people dodge questions, they answer a question with a question, they ignore what was asked entirely, they change the subject, they lie. But in amateur dialogue, every question gets a direct answer. Where were you last night? I was at the bar with my friends. Which friends? Steve and Marcus. What time did you leave? Around midnight. This is an interrogation, not a conversation. Here's how real people talk and how that conversation would probably actually go. Where were you last night? Why are you asking? Just answer the question. I don't like your tone. Jane, where were you? You know what? I don't have to explain myself to you. Now there's tension, and now, as readers, we're interested. But an important caveat is that not all characters dodge questions. Highly trained communicators, detectives, doctors, lawyers, military personnel, diplomats often communicate very clearly because they're trained to do so. The rule is simply let your character's answer pattern reflect who they are. The rule is that people dodge uncomfortable questions, so let your characters be evasive, defensive, or dishonest, unless clear communication is part of their character. Mistake number 8, dialogue that exists just to be clever. So some writers fall in love with witty banter. Every conversation becomes a battle of quips. Every character is suddenly a stand-up comedian. Nice weather we're having. If by nice you mean apocalyptically terrible, then yes. Absolutely delightful. Your sarcasm is truly a gift. I know. I'm basically a sarcasm sommelier. This can work for certain characters in certain contexts, but usually it becomes tiresome to the reader. The fix is not every line needs to be clever. Sometimes characters just need to communicate information because they're tired, distracted, or just don't have a witty comeback ready. Real people aren't performing all the time. So the rule is that clever dialogue is seasoning. It's not the main course. So use it sparingly or it loses impact. Every year I open just 5 ghostwriting slots where I work personally with authors to write their books. 1 slot's already gone. If you want to work with me to write your book, get in touch now before the remaining 4 are taken using the links below. Mistake number 9 is no pauses, interruptions, or overlap. Amateur dialogue flows perfectly. Every character waits politely for the other person to finish speaking. Nobody interrupts, nobody trails off, nobody loses their train of thought. But real conversations are messy. Let me show you how to actually format this on the page. So interruptions, I would recommend the use of an M- for these. Look, I just think that maybe we should, no. You didn't even let me finish. I don't need to. The answer is no. Now, if the character is trailing off or losing their thought, you might write it like this. I wanted to tell you that I ... I don't know how to say this. Then don't. I have to. It's just ... God, this is harder than I thought. And then if you want to interrupt mid-beat with action, you could say, let me finish. He raised a hand. Why? You never listened to me when... Because you're lying. So you can see how using interruptions, trailing off, pauses, they all make the dialogue feel real instead of scripted. And the rule here is to let your characters interrupt each other, lose their words, and often struggle to express themselves. Here's what separates professional dialogue from amateur dialogue. Professional dialogue sounds effortless because the writer worked really hard to make it sound natural. They read it out loud dozens of times. They cut unnecessary pleasantries. They added conflict and subtext where appropriate. Made each core character sound distinct. Let conversations be messy and imperfect. Use summary dialogue when the details didn't matter. And amateur dialogue sounds stilted because the writer is trying to control everything. They're explaining too much, making it too neat. They're keeping it just too polite. Real conversations are chaotic, emotional, and full of subtext. When that suits the character, your dialogue should reflect your character's personalities and not follow rigid rules. Let me give you an assignment, some writing homework if you like. Pick 3 dialogue scenes from your manuscript. Read them out loud. Then ask yourself, can I tell who's speaking without the dialogue tags? If not, your main characters sound the same. Am I using adverbs in dialogue tags? If you are, cut them. Are my characters explaining things they both already know? If they are, find another way or use summary dialogue. Does every sentence use perfect grammar? Add contractions, fragments, and interruptions. Is every question being answered directly? Let characters dodge, deflect, and lie unless they're trained to communicate clearly. Am I trying too hard to be clever? Tone it down. Does every character wait politely to speak? Add interruptions and overlaps. And then try this exercise. Take one dialogue scene and rewrite it 3 ways. All on the nose, everybody says exactly what they mean. All subtext, nobody says what they really mean. And then a balanced version, direct where it suits the character, indirect where natural, and compare them. Which version best serves your story and your characters? Don't forget to join our email newsletter for weekly writing advice like this. Practical techniques you can use immediately. Link is in the description. If you want to work with me to write your book, get in touch now before the remaining 4 ghostwriting slots are taken. And if you've already written your manuscript and want expert editing that makes your dialogue sound natural while keeping your story moving forward, check out our editing services. We've spent over 11 years building a team of some of the best editors in the world. Now, drop a comment. What's your biggest struggle when writing dialogue? YouTube will now be recommending another one of my valuable writing videos just here. So make sure to go ahead and watch that one next. Thanks for watching.